Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. My name is Lorena. I do mommy, lifestyle, and beauty videos. Today is going to be more mommy related. Today I'm talking about toddlers and consent. Before we get started in today's video, don't forget to subscribe down below, turn on post notifications, give this video a big thumbs up, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, and let's get into it. So consent obviously is an extremely important thing, not just for adults in relationships, but with your children as well. It's going to be hard to raise your children one way and control everything that they do because they're your children, and then suddenly expect them to completely understand consent. Sometimes we send mixed signals when we control our children and you do what we say you have to do and you do it exactly this way, or you follow exactly what I say, and then when they get older and they have more freedom and they start having friendships or romantic relationships, they need to now suddenly understand that people don't do exactly what you say. There's a balance, there's respect, there's consent. So I wanted to start on consent when my child was really young. Of course, I will go into how sometimes you can't always, not that you can't always get consent, but sometimes it gets a little bit tricky when you have a child that you do have to make some decisions for them. So I'm going to get more into that later. Your goal when teaching consent to your child is to give them as much body autonomy as possible. Have as much control over their own body as possible, because believe it or not, we do not own our children. We do not control our children. In my household, our goal with our son and hopefully our future children is that we want to guide them and we want to teach them to be great members of society. We don't want to control them and teach them to be robots who only know how to listen and follow exactly what someone tells them. For us and for our family, that's not the goal, and I don't think that's a healthy way to raise your children. So consent isn't only about sex. I feel like oftentimes as adults they think consent is about sex, it's about saying yes, saying no, whatever the case is, but that's not the only time consent comes into play. Consent comes into play regarding your body at all times. For us in our household, when we're teaching consent, it's basically us trying to empower our children to make decisions for themselves about their own body. I want to empower my son to be able to make decisions for what feels best for him and what feels safe and comfortable for him, and we don't want him to be in situations where he's uncomfortable but he's not empowered to say anything because he's taught that you don't disrespect adults or you don't talk back to mom. I don't want that, because I want my son to be able to talk to me freely and openly, even if it's something that ends up upsetting me or offending me, because him offending me, that's not his responsibility. That's my responsibility. For our family, we've modeled consent from a really young age, from before you even think that you should probably start teaching them about consent. Because like I said earlier, I want my child to grow up having consent be a part of their childhood and in their life, and it not be anything new when they get older, versus having to listen and follow exact directions from their parents and then later on having to now figure out consent and being confused because when they were young they had to just do what they were told, or they had no control over what happened to them or their bodies, but now they do, and now they have a responsibility to be respectful to other people as well. I don't want to give mixed signals. I want it to be very clear about consent from a very early age. So I want to give you an example of how I model consent with my 2-year-old. So the other day we were playing around, we were tickling, and I brought him up to me and I was about to like blow a raspberry on his stomach. That's what they call it, right? When you like blow air and it vibrates. I was about to blow air on his stomach because we were having fun. Everyone was laughing, and then he takes his hands and very gently he goes like this, pushes my chin up away. So immediately I stopped. I put him down on the ground. I said, okay, mommy will stop. I said, your hands on my face told me that you wanted me to stop, so I'm gonna stop right now. I could have done 3 things. I could have ignored his hands and I could have just fought my way to blow the raspberry on his stomach, which would be ignoring his signals, right? I could have just stopped and not said anything and continued on, which would be following his lead in regards to consent. But I went with the third option, and that is to follow his lead in regards to consent and stop what I was doing, stop the action, but then verbalize exactly what I was doing and why I was doing it, because I want to model it for him, but I also at this age want to explain why I'm doing it, because he's not gonna make the connection in his brain that he pushed my head away, therefore mommy stopped, and that means that's consent and she's respecting my body. He's not going to make that connection. I feel like adults don't even make that connection oftentimes. So I wanted to explain to him that him pushing my head away was body language, was him giving me a sign that he didn't want me to do that. So I'm going to listen. So I'm going to be respectful of his choice. I'm not going to gaslight him and be like, mommy was just playing, I thought we were playing around, or I'm not gonna ignore it. Obviously, I want to just simply immediately stop and explain to him, oh, mommy will stop because I could tell that you didn't want me to do that anymore. So consent is not only a yes or a no. It's not only yes, mommy, you can tickle me, or mommy, stop tickling me. It could be in an uncomfortable facial expression. It could be body language, them turning away or them tensing up. You just have to try your best to read the signals, and I know that's not easy for everyone. Like everyone's skill level of being able to read others' expressions varies, and I know that it's not as easy for other people, but if you can try your best to pay attention to your child's expressions when you're playing, then you might be able to pick up on when they start being uncomfortable or when they want to stop playing, but maybe they don't feel like they can tell you that because you're the parent and they have to be respectful or whatever the case is. So that's an example of how I modeled consent to my son. Another thing I wanted to touch on is, how do we get consent from our toddlers when it's something that they don't actually have a choice over, right? When it comes to changing their diaper or when it comes to bathing. Sometimes, most times, they don't have a choice if they're going to change their diaper or if they're going to bathe. You have to do it. And oftentimes, this comes down to health and hygiene, right? So, of course, you can explain to them, we're going to change your diaper now because we need to make sure that we get you a clean, dry diaper so you don't get rash. Or we're gonna make sure that you take a bath so we can get all the bad germs off of you and you're ready to play again. Or you're ready for your nap, or ready for bedtime or dinner. Whatever's coming next, you can prepare them for that. But sometimes they don't care. They just don't want to bathe or they don't want to change their diaper. But those, again, are not always things that we can be like, okay, you don't want to do it, so we're not going to do it. So in those cases, it is a little bit tricky, but for us in our family, we don't give him a choice on if he's going to change his diaper. We try to give him autonomy in other ways. So, example, he doesn't have a choice on if we're changing his diaper, because that's something that we have to do, and oftentimes we have to do it right now. But we give him a choice in where he changes his diaper. So before, when we used to have a changing table, I would ask him, do you want to change on the changing table or do you want to go on mommy and daddy's bed? Or if you don't want to do it on the bed, you can do it on the floor or the couch or whatever. You give them a choice. And that way, even though they don't have a choice over whether they get changed, they get a choice over if they get changed on the table, if they get changed on the bed or the ground or on their changing mat on the floor or whatever the case is. And if you want to go a step further, you can even give them autonomy over what they wear. So if there happen to be changing during that time, or even if it's a completely separate time, you can ask them, okay, go pick out what you want to wear. But what I do, sometimes I want him to look a certain way when we go out, or if we're going out to a nicer dinner or to the mall, he can't be just picking any old random stuff. Like if there has to be a dress code or some sort like that, I will give him options. I'll give him 2 or 3 options and I'll pick them. That way, no matter which option he chooses, it will be appropriate for the place that we're going. So you still give him autonomy and he can choose, but it still fits and it still makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying? I hope that makes sense. You're basically trying to look for as many opportunities to give your child autonomy. Give your child the chance to choose. Another example is dinner, lunch, breakfast, whatever. Maybe they don't get to choose what they eat because they don't run the household, or they shouldn't run the household. You as a mom or a dad or a parent or caretaker, whatever, you run the household, so you choose what's for dinner. But maybe they can choose which plate they eat off of. Maybe they can choose which fork they want. Maybe they can choose which bib they use. There often is an element to that activity or to that day or to that moment where they have no choice over, unfortunately. But there are other options surrounding that moment that they oftentimes do or can have autonomy in. But you as a parent need to be aware of that and then need to give them that autonomy. They don't know that, oh, I can choose my outfit, I can choose where I get my diaper changed. They just think, oh, I'm gonna be forced to go over here and open my diaper and have a cold wipe on me. So in the moments especially that they cannot control whether they have to change their diaper or they have to take a bath, oftentimes this stuff has to deal with their body. Give them other choices so they don't feel like they're just completely helpless. One more big thing I wanted to talk about is consent when greeting people. In Hawaii, it's a huge thing. Everyone hugs, we give honi honi, we give kisses. Of course, with COVID, it's a little bit different right now, but I don't want to just overlook it and be like, oh, we don't have to teach it because it's not relevant, because it is relevant. Anyways, whatever. I just want to teach it to him because I think it's important for him to know. So usually when you enter a house or you greet people, in Hawaii we give hug and like kiss on the cheek or whatever. But I vividly remember being younger and not wanting to hug certain people, whether it be because they gave me a weird vibe or simply because I do not know you. I don't want to hug you. I don't want to have to hug you. I will say hi to you and greet you because that is a polite thing to do, but I don't want to touch you, and I do not want to ever put my children through that. So with our son, he gets a choice. The one thing that he has no control over is if he greets people. He will greet people, but you have a choice in how you do so. He can hug someone, he can give high five, he can give knuckles, he can wave, or he can not do anything and he can just say hi with his voice. Right? So those are the options we give. I mean, we don't give him all 5 or 6 options every single time we greet somebody, but if we go to someone's house and we see his grandparents or his great grandparents, I can, say, Noah, go say hi. You can give hug or a high five. Give him options. And then sometimes, whether it be he's tired or he's shy or whatever it is, he doesn't do any of them and he kind of just looks at them. So for me, I'm like, okay, that's fine. You don't have to hug or high five or knuckles or whatever, but I just get him to say hi or hello. I just make sure that he learns the manners of greeting people, but also that he has consent over if anyone touches him. We don't know what our children are going through in regards to their sensory overload because sometimes they won't tell us. And as a young child, like my son is at 2, he's not really aware of if he's having a sensory overload or not, because if he is, he'll probably just be fussy or in a bad mood. He won't be like, hey mom, there's too much sound going on, or there's too much TV, or I don't want anyone to touch me. They do not process that kind of stuff. Even as adults, some of us have a hard time processing that kind of stuff. So I always make sure that I give my children, or I give my child, options when it comes to greeting people. And when someone else greets him and they say, give me a hug, give me a kiss, I always try to chime in and I'll say, Noah, do you want to give X a hug or do you want to give a high five? And that way I kind of open it up a little bit without being like, no, we don't tell him to give you a hug. That's so demanding. Like, we don't need to be lecturing people because I don't think that's necessary. But in regards to Noah and speaking to Noah, I try to then open it up a little bit and say, yeah, Noah, go say hi to grandma. Do you want to give her a hug or a high five? And everything's fine. I've never really had the situation where I had to tell someone like, please please stop hugging my son, or please stop touching him, or please give him space. Thank goodness I have not had to deal with that. So far, my family is pretty respectful. We've also been in quarantine for a year, so we really haven't seen a whole ton of other people. So as my son gets older, we are going to adjust and grow with how we talk about consent. We're gonna always try to keep it very age appropriate, but right now he's not in school, he's not in daycare, we don't have play dates because of COVID, so he doesn't really interact with any other children. So once he does start to interact with other children, our conversations of consent, or our examples and modeling of consent, will change just a little bit. Obviously, all the messages will be to respect the consent or lack of consent someone gives you, but how we talk about it will change, you know, once he starts being with other kids more, once he goes to preschool, once he goes to elementary school, once he gets older, once he starts to make, you know, close friendships. Then before he even starts to get into romantic relationships, there will be that talk of consent in regards to sex and romantic relationships. I think that's really important that those kinds of things happen before those stages in life happen. I think our children, especially our boys, need to be educated on it very, very early, before they even have a chance to become shitty men, because that's one of my worst nightmares. So yeah, right now that's how we deal with consent with our toddler, but it's gonna continue to grow and evolve as he gets older. So although this feels like it can be a very daunting topic, a very awkward conversation, when you start it as a toddler, when you start it from when your children are really young, it won't have to be this very serious, very intense conversation when they get older, because they've been experiencing it, they've been living it, they've been understanding it. When you're teaching your children consent from a very young age, you can then flip it and give them examples of their own behavior, right? If let's say that I feel touched out right now and I can't have anybody touching me right now, that's like a sensory overload for me, and then my son climbs on me and wants me, you would think like, oh, he's your child, like he doesn't understand. But you can actually set him off of you and say, please respect mommy's boundaries right now, give me a few minutes, and then we can play, and then we can hug. Everything doesn't have to be so deep and explained in such complicated ways. And of course, sometimes your child won't even understand what you're saying in that. They might just come back on you. Sometimes you just have to try. Sometimes you just have to attempt that conversation, or attempt to model it or explain it, and they might not get it the first time, which is realistic for a lot of different things in children. But when you do it from a young age, and then you continue to teach them about their own consent that they can give or not give, your consent that you can give or not give, then it becomes something that's part of their everyday life. It becomes normal, it becomes regular, it becomes assumed that you need to get consent before you touch someone or you do something. Then when they get older, it's not as daunting. So I hope this helped you. I hope this inspired you to start teaching consent with your children, because it's so important. Another thing that I just wanted to add real quick is that it's super important to teach your children about their body parts in the correct scientific terms and not using cute other words. Do a quick Google search on why you should use proper names for private parts with your children, and I'm sure you'll pull up stories that are honestly really disturbing. But if you need to realize why, then you should read those stories, because it's really disgusting and gross. Yeah, but vagina, penis, clitoris, labia, all regular. Uterus, breasts, anus, buttocks, it's all, those are not bad words. It's good and it's fabulous to teach your children the proper terms of their body. That way they can protect themselves against any potential predators that are around. I just wanted to add that in there, because the main part of us teaching consent to our children is to make sure that they respect others, but equally to make sure others respect them. We want to teach them consent because we don't want someone else coming and manipulating them and gaslighting them into doing things or experiencing things that they should not be experiencing. So on the same hand, you need to teach your children the proper terms for their body parts. That will very much so lessen the chance that they will be experiencing any type of abuse. Arming your children with knowledge about their body and empowering them to speak up for themselves and to know what is right and what is wrong, or what feels right or what makes them uncomfortable, is really, really important. So that's what we do in this household. I hope it helps you guys out. Let me know down below if you have any questions, or slide into my DMs if you want to ask me a question privately. But yeah, I hope you guys like this video. I've been wanting to talk about this for a really long time, so I'm glad I got around to it. But that's gonna be it for today. Don't forget to subscribe down below, turn on post notifications, give this video a big thumbs up, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, and I'll see you in next week Monday's video. Love you. Bye.
I saw the city passing by my window. Was in the crowd, but I felt so alone. Looked at my phone.